because I've seen different forms.
Or are they rationalizing, or are they attempting to rationalize the prejudice that they have by calling it preference rather, than what it really is. So you have to look at it, realistically.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had a conversation with one of my neighbors recently, and he's a darker complected guy, and he went on to explain why it is that he prefers light-skinned women, and they just display, in a roundabout way, he was trying to say that they display a different type of beauty than darker-skinned girls. And for me, because at first I was kind of with him on a few things, and because me personally, I don't see it as a matter of color. I mean, even growing up, like I said, I used to get teased for liking the lighter complected guys, but it had more to do with what I was actually attracted to about their features. You know what I mean? It wasn't that I did not date darker complected guys or brown skinned guys or something like that. But my family members would tease me on that, and I'm like, why do I have to be judged because I'm more attracted to, I guess, quote unquote, what they would call back then the pretty boys, which my attraction over time changed as I got older. But, just for me, I didn't really trip about, that person's color like that. And sometimes I just think people get confused because, somebody may just not necessarily even prefer, but they just find themselves attracted to, a certain type of people. Like me, it's about the features. I could care less about the color of, somebody's skin, but it's just a matter of what is it about their features that actually draws me to them. And, because I don't think not every light-skinned person is attractive just simply because they're light-skinned. I've seen some not so attractive light-skinned people as well as some dark-skinned people. So, I don't know. I think it goes a little bit deeper with some people, depending on how they're explaining, what they like and why they like what they like. But, for him, I think it was a matter of just preferring light-skinned women over dark-skinned women just because he saw a different type of beauty in them.
He likes it. I love it. We have another caller. Let's bring on another caller from area code 601. 601. Maybe ask you call.
Hey, Kim, this is Eric Teamer.
Hey, Eric, welcome.
Hey, how you doing? I was just listening in, and I just decided to go ahead and press 1, jump in on the conversation if I can.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I had 3 points, but I wrote down 2, and I was trying to remember 3, but I forgot 3. Anyway, a lot of what this is one of my favorite topics. So, a lot of what you're talking about, I think a lot of people need to understand that the biggest part of this is it's psychological. A lot of what we go through is psychological. Yeah. You can't ask these questions without looking at the aspects of how they manipulated our mindsets on a psychological level. Because there's no way that you can wipe out a group of people's history, or I won't even say wipe out, I'll say hide. You place, hide, whitewash, whatever term you want to put on it, that labels history. And then you remove the history, and then you tell these group of people you have no culture, no history. As far as you're concerned, this is where your history starts. And that's why if you look at school textbooks, most of the world history and American history textbooks often start out with history around the black people dealing with slavery. It starts there. So you're starting to be conditioned to believe that you were always in a subservient level. So you have that mentality. And I was listening, and someone brought up that issue or asked the question, I guess, in the chat room about where you can go to find your black history. And today, with all the technology that's out there, one of the first places I would always suggest is YouTube, because a lot of our scholars, black scholars, who you would not know, you would not hear in the classroom that someone would teach you in elementary or middle school or high school. They're there. They've been recorded and archived for some purpose or reason. Our black history isn't necessarily hidden or put away to where we find it, a lot of times what I've found is it's because they use specific names. For instance, when you talk about, teaching your children, how can I teach my children? And I sit down and you've heard me say it several times, how can you teach your child that even within the Roman Empire, you had black Caesars within the Roman Empire?
Wow, I never knew that, actually.
Is that funny?
No, I mean, it's funny that I've honestly never heard of that. And I just put in the chat, I'd never heard of Neil Tyson until after I left college. Like, I heard that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is really fascinating. Because you do have a point, and I'm actually proving your point right now, because I never heard that, ever. And,
well,
go ahead.
If you look at, for instance, I know if you look it up, and like Kim said, do your research. A lot of times we talk about it, and a lot of people get turned off, and this is part of the psychological aspect that Kim talked about before, about sitting around tables and talking about it in whispers, is because psychologically, it's kind of, I guess, I want to say, almost in our DNA, where we could not talk about it out loud, so we did talk about it in circles, in small, quiet circles, and now it's at a point where we're almost ashamed to talk about being black. We're ashamed to show our, the ethnic side of us, to do these things. It's almost downplayed and it's looked upon as a negative thing. And you talk about looking at historical aspects, and like I said, a Caesar and a black Caesar in the Roman Empire, and you saying you've never heard of it. I would wager that you probably have, and you probably have even seen it. If you saw the movie Gladiator with Russell Crowe, they talked about Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius' father was Servius Septimus, and if you look it up, he was born in a town, I want to say Lagos. That's an African in Africa. What they do is they don't necessarily come out and call you by name. They are not going to say he was black. They will say that he was from a certain part of a certain land or a certain country. They'll say that he was a Moor. They'll say that he was part of the burnt-faced people. But they name you by names, and if we're not familiar with these areas, then we don't pick it up. So you see history being repeated, and you see, I guess I would say whitewashed, where you'll see the white face replacing the black face of these people. And, like I said, when you talk about learning where to get this information from, Dr. John Hendrik Clark was one of the foremost scholars in Pan-African history and African histories and studies. Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, who taught at Rutgers as well, wrote a book called They Came Before Columbus, dealing with the Africans in the Americas long before Columbus, and even discussing how Columbus wrote his journal, how he had passed coming to the Americas, past black people coming to the Americas, met black people in the West Indies, what is now the West Indies, being told when he got to South America that there were Africans there already, that they had been trading. If you want to know about studies for like people who live in New York, Arthur Schomburg Center for Research is an excellent place to learn about your people, because that's even where Dr. John Hendrik Clark went to learn and study. You're talking about black children and the psychological effects of children in schools. Look up Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu, who talks about this. And some of these things that they were talking about, they were being discussed, how children were being treated like the black child in the schools, and how a lot of them are being shaped and molded in the way they believe it. Back in the early 80s, we just blew it off. A lot of us were blowing it off and blowing off some of the information. So you have these people who are talking about it. You have these lessons that are there. It's just that, there's kind of psychological factor of being ashamed to deal with it, and not wanting to consciously speak up on it. And then the fact that some of this information is hidden in plain sight, it's just been put in a way that we don't recognize it. And instead of really investigating for ourselves, we stop doing it. And now I remember my third point, because you talked about libraries. And I was going to say, maybe part of it is having your own library inside your own home. And even if it's an e-library, with today's technology. I used to go to the Goodwills and all these other places and pick up books for 25